There's a painting hanging in a major European museum right now. It's worth millions of dollars. Museums are proud to display it. Art historians study it. Tourists photograph it every single day. But here's what nobody talks about. The painting was stolen from a Jewish family during the Holocaust, and those descendants don't even know it's there. This is the dark secret that the art world has been trying to hide for 80 years. And today, we're going to expose exactly what happened, and why some of the world's most prestigious museums are still refusing to do the right thing. But that's not even the wildest part of this story. Stick around until the end because we're going to reveal which museums are refusing to return art. The shocking $135 million painting that took a family 7 years to recover, and the one artwork by Raphael that many experts believe is the most important missing masterpiece on the entire planet. Between 1933 and 1945, something unprecedented happened in human history. Nazi Germany orchestrated the largest art theft ever committed. We're not talking about a handful of paintings. We're not even talking about thousands. We're talking about over 650,000 artworks, paintings, sculptures, manuscripts, precious objects, systematically looted from across Europe. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to the entire combined collections of the top 50 museums in the world, stolen in less than 12 years. But this wasn't random. It wasn't opportunistic. It was strategic. It was methodical. It was intentional cultural genocide. Most of the stolen art came from Jewish families, collectors, and dealers. Families like the Goudstikkers of Amsterdam, one of the most prominent Old Master art dealers on the entire European continent. When the Nazis invaded the Netherlands, the Goudstikkers had one of the finest private collections in existence. Within days, every single piece was confiscated. Every painting, every sculpture, every manuscript, gone. And here's what makes this even more sinister. Estimates suggest that as much as 20 to 30% of all art treasures in Europe were stolen by the Nazis during World War II. That's roughly 1 in every 3 or 4 valuable artworks on the continent. The Nazis didn't just steal art because they were greedy. They stole it because they understood something that most people still don't fully appreciate today. Art is power. Art is culture. Art is identity. Art is a civilization's soul. By stealing Jewish art, they were trying to erase Jewish existence from European civilization itself. By taking works of art they deemed degenerate, they were trying to replace humanity's cultural heritage with their own twisted ideology. This wasn't theft. This was an attempt to rewrite history. The Nazis created a terrifying bureaucracy for stealing art. They called it the ERR, the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, or Rosenberg's Task Force. This wasn't a random band of looters. This was an organized military unit with one single purpose: to systematically steal Europe's greatest artworks. They confiscated paintings from museums. They raided private homes. They forced Jewish dealers to sell their collections at below-market prices, knowing that if they refused, their families would be deported. They even created a special Nazi agency to classify which artworks were German cultural property and which were considered degenerate art. Modern, abstract, or Jewish works that didn't fit Nazi ideology. Modern art was considered degenerate. Impressionist paintings were considered degenerate. Jewish artists were considered degenerate. This gave them a convenient excuse to steal anything they wanted. But here's the thing, they didn't destroy all of it. Some of it went to the personal collections of Nazi leadership. Some of it went to the museums of the Reich. But most of it went to one man. His name was Hermann Göring. He was one of the most powerful men in the Nazi Party, the commander of the Luftwaffe, Hitler's right-hand man, and obsessed with power in every form. But Göring had a secret passion. He was an art collector. While ordinary German families were suffering from war rationing, while soldiers were dying on the Eastern Front, while the Holocaust was consuming the lives of 6 million people, Hermann Göring was building one of the largest private art collections in the world. All of it stolen. The Hermann Göring collection was formed for the most part by looting of Jewish property in Nazi-occupied areas between 1936 and 1945. His collection totaled more than 1,000 items, valued at $200 million in 1945. most of it stolen from France. That's over 3.5 billion in today's money. Think about that. One man, one Nazi officer, one private collection worth more than the annual budgets of most countries. But Göring wasn't just collecting for himself. He had a vision. He would go on shopping sprees in occupied Paris, hunting for the greatest masterpieces Europe had to offer. He would walk into museums and homes, point at a painting, and it would be his. And the thing that makes this even more disturbing? The diamond choker worn by Adele Bloch-Bauer in Gustav Klimt's famous portrait, which was passed on to family members, reportedly ended up decorating the neck of Göring's wife. Not only were they stealing art, they were stealing jewelry, heirlooms, personal possessions. They were taking the physical essence of people's lives. But Göring wasn't alone in his obsession. In fact, there was someone even more dangerous. Adolf Hitler had a grand vision that went beyond even Göring's collection. Hitler wanted to build something called the Führer Museum, the Leader's Museum. This would be, in Hitler's mind, the greatest art museum in the world, a colossal temple to Nazi ideology and cultural supremacy. This wasn't just about decoration. This wasn't just about having beautiful things. This was about mythology. Hitler believed that by controlling Europe's greatest artworks, he could control history itself. He could rewrite the narrative. He could prove that Nazi Germany was the culmination of human civilization. Hitler would spend hours looking at catalogs of stolen artwork. He would personally approve which pieces went to the Führer Museum. Nazi authorities even auctioned off 126 paintings by modern masters, many previously purged from German public institutions, including works by Van Gogh and Matisse, using the profits to fund the Nazi Party. The Führer Museum was never completed, but by 1945 the Nazis had collected enough artwork to fill it many times over. When Nazi Germany was defeated and the war ended, the Allies faced an unprecedented crisis. What do we do with millions of stolen artworks hidden across a defeated continent? General Dwight D. Eisenhower knew that recovering this art was going to be almost impossible. So he created something revolutionary, the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, later known as the Monuments Men and Women. Think of them as the art world's secret recovery mission. These weren't just soldiers. They were museum curators, art historians, and archaeologists in military uniform. They were given a task that seemed impossible: find the stolen art before it's destroyed or lost forever. General Eisenhower, General Bradley, and General George Patton, the legendary tank commander, were all tasked with hunting down masterpieces hidden in salt mines, castles, and underground bunkers across defeated Germany and Nazi-occupied Europe. Army units, including the famous 101st Airborne Division, spent months cataloging, photographing, and recovering these artworks. They would find paintings stacked haphazardly in caves. They would discover Renaissance sculptures crammed into warehouses. They would locate entire collections stored in abandoned mines damaged by moisture and neglect. One of the most famous discoveries came in 1945, when the Monuments Men found Raphael's portrait of a young man, circa 1513-1514, which had been plundered by the Nazis in Poland. This painting, created by one of the greatest artists who ever lived, had been stolen, hidden, and lost for years. By the end of their mission, the Monuments Men and Women had recovered an astonishing number of pieces. They had saved an enormous percentage of Europe's cultural heritage from total destruction. But here's the catch: they didn't recover all of it. Now, 70 years later, some 100,000 pieces are still missing. Some estimates put the number even higher, possibly as many as 200,000 artworks. Out of 650,000 stolen pieces, they recovered somewhere around 400,000 to 550,000. That means at least 100,000 artworks, and possibly twice that, have simply vanished. Somewhere in the world, there are masterpieces by Van Gogh, Monet, Rembrandt, Picasso, and countless other artists hanging in private homes, locked in vaults, or moldering in forgotten warehouses. Some have been sitting in museum basements for decades with no one realizing they're stolen. Some are owned by wealthy collectors who have no idea they're displaying stolen property. Some were destroyed in the chaos of war. And here's what's truly haunting: we'll probably never find them all. Each lost painting represents a family's memory, a culture's treasure, a victim's humanity reduced to ashes. Raphael's portrait of a young man that was looted by the Nazis from the Czartoryski Museum is regarded by many historians as the most important painting missing since World War II. This is a Renaissance masterpiece, one of the greatest paintings ever created, and it's just gone, vanished. But the ones we do find, the ones we can recover, they matter more than you might think. They're proof, they're justice, they're a refusal to let the Nazis have the final word. Let me tell you about specific artworks, because their stories reveal how broken this system really is. After 8 decades, a Nazi-looted Claude Monet painting stolen during World War II was finally returned to its rightful owners. The artwork, Bord de Mer, Seaside, was painted around 1865 and could be worth up to $700,000. This painting was stolen from a Jewish family, disappeared for 80 years, and was finally recovered just last year. The family's descendants got to see their grandfather's painting again. Just imagine the emotion of that moment. Then there's the story of Gustav Klimt's portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer-Rhein, also known as the Woman in Gold. This painting was stolen by the Nazis, given to the Galerie Belvedere in Vienna, and then became the center of a court case when Maria Altmann, niece of the original owner, went to court for 7 years claiming possession. Think about that. 7 years of legal battles. A woman fighting against the entire Austrian government, fighting against one of Europe's most prestigious museums, fighting to recover her family's stolen property. When she finally won, the painting sold for $135 million, making it the most expensive painting ever sold at that time. But the victory wasn't about the money. It was about justice. One of the paintings recently pulled from a prestigious Swiss museum for investigation is The Old Tower by Vincent van Gogh. Museums around the world started pulling paintings from their walls because they could not prove where the artworks came from before 1945. How many paintings are hanging in museums right now with suspicious histories? How many masterpieces are being displayed while families don't even know they exist? Several paintings stolen from major collections include Count Lepic and His Daughters by Edgar Degas, Poppies near Véteuil by Claude Monet, and Van Gogh's Blossoming Chestnut Branches. To date, the Van Gogh and Monet portraits have been recovered, while the other 2 remain missing. This is the frustrating reality. Some artworks are recovered, some are sold to museums, some remain lost forever. But here's what's even more infuriating. After the war, over 200 paintings that belonged to the Goudstikker family were recovered. The Dutch government had them. For decades, they simply kept them, displaying them in museums, protecting them, earning money from tourists who came to see them, but never giving them back. Why? Because governments claimed they were now part of their national cultural heritage. It took 60 years of legal battles, 60 years of the family pleading their case, 60 years of the Goudstikker descendants watching their family's stolen property hang on museum walls, while curators explained the painting's historical significance. Finally, in 2006, the Dutch government agreed to return them. But by then, the original owners were dead. The family never saw those paintings again. Then there's the case of the Austrian collector Oscar Bondy. His entire collection was seized by the Nazis. Some paintings found their way into Austrian government museums, where they were displayed for decades as part of the national cultural heritage. When the family tried to reclaim them, the Austrian government fought them in court. It wasn't until international pressure mounted that Austria reluctantly agreed to conduct provenance research, basically admitting they needed to figure out if the art was stolen, even though everyone already knew it was stolen. Think about that. A museum knew the art was stolen. They displayed it anyway. They profited from it, and when asked to return it, they said they needed to do research first. These aren't isolated incidents. The Washington Conference Principles on Nazi-Confiscated Art were established to help resolve ongoing art restitution issues, an international agreement from 1998 about returning looted art. But nearly 30 years later, thousands of pieces remain unreturned. Museums are still fighting to keep stolen art. Think about that. Think about it really hard. Institutions dedicated to preserving human culture and history are literally fighting in court to keep stolen artwork that they know belonged to murdered families. They're using legal technicalities. They're claiming the art belongs to the state now. They're saying the case is too old. They're waiting for the families to die. But here's what most people don't realize. Nazi-looted art changed the entire art world in ways we're only now beginning to understand. First, it forced the creation of new accountability systems. Museums now have to research the provenance, the history, and ownership of every significant artwork. This costs millions of dollars and has revealed uncomfortable truths about where many artworks really came from. Second, it created a precedent that rippled far beyond Nazi looting. When institutions began investigating artworks taken from their former colonies, they were following a template that was first created to address Nazi theft. The rules we developed to recover stolen Jewish art are now being used to recover African artifacts, indigenous cultural property, and artwork taken during colonial expansion. In other words, the systematic Nazi looting of art, and our attempt to correct it, fundamentally changed how the entire world thinks about stolen cultural property. So here's what we still don't know. Approximately 650,000 artworks were stolen by the Nazis. We've recovered somewhere around 400,000 to 550,000. That means at least 100,000 pieces, and possibly up to 200,000, are still missing. Somewhere in the world, there's a Picasso watercolor called Naked Woman on the Beach that was painted in Provence in 1923. It was stolen. It was never recovered. No one knows where it is. Somewhere there are 7 works by Henri Matisse. Gone. Somewhere there's a portrait of Gabrielle Diot by Edgar Degas. Missing. Some paintings are sitting in private vaults, owned by billionaires who have no idea they're displaying stolen property or they simply don't care. Some are moldering in warehouses. Some were destroyed in Allied bombing raids. Some were burned by the Nazis themselves to hide evidence of their crimes. And Raphael's portrait of a young man, regarded by many experts as the most important painting missing since World War II, is still out there somewhere. It was created over 500 years ago. It survived centuries of human history, but it couldn't survive the Nazi regime, and it hasn't been seen in 80 years. What if it's hanging in a private home right now? What if a family has no idea they own a masterpiece worth tens of millions of dollars? Remember that painting I mentioned at the beginning? The one hanging in a museum right now, worth millions, stolen from a Holocaust family? The truth is there are hundreds of them, possibly thousands. Some museums are finally doing the right thing and working with researchers and families to identify and return them. Others are still fighting. Others are still denying that they have stolen artwork. But the conversation is changing. Thanks to the monuments men and women, thanks to researchers, thanks to families who never stopped fighting. The art world will never be able to hide from this story again. If you want to help identify stolen artwork, or you know of a painting with a suspicious history, there are organizations like the World Jewish Restitution Organization, Project Heart, and the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany that work to reunite families with their cultural heritage. And if you found this story fascinating, please share this video. Help spread awareness that this isn't ancient history. It's ongoing history. Somewhere right now, a museum is refusing to return a stolen painting. Somewhere right now, a family is still waiting for justice. Somewhere right now, a masterpiece is still missing. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. If you discovered that a painting you owned was actually stolen art worth millions of dollars, would you keep quiet? Or would you do the right thing and return it?